I mean, you know, I got a lot to kind of cover there and go back and kind of assess and look at. So it's hard to really say and pinpoint one area. You know, the biggest thing is obviously just want to find a better way to win more often. You know, we got to, you know, get some of those games that we were close in and find a way to win, and just get some consistency out on the field and some play that will help us a little bit better. But we'll take a look at all that and try to, you know, do the best we can to make the team better. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for us is just going to be consistency. I think there's a lot of good plays on tape, but you know, the games that we lost, there's not enough. You know, and I think there's some big areas that we have to really kind of eliminate some of the bad football. You know, the turnover situation, we have to do a better job of that. We have to try to get more turnovers on defense, and you know, the penalty situation. We certainly had a couple games this year where, especially early penalties cost us, and they really, you know, probably swung the game into not our favor. And if we can do a couple of those things a little bit better, you know, again, I think we had 3 games with you know, under 6 total points. So those are tight games. You know, we have to do all the little things right, and penalties are a big part of it. It's going to be a lot there. I mean, I think I'll take a minute and you know, try to you know, relax here for a second. But we're really you know, I'll just keep pushing. We want to get back to 2019 and get right and get working and you know, just start as soon as we can. So you know, I understand I got a lot of work to do, and I got to get better, and you know, this team's got to get better, and you know, the sooner we can get on that, you know, the better I'll feel.
Things didn't exactly go according to plan for Matt Patricia during his first season as Lions head coach. However, can a surge towards the finish and an improving defense be a positive harbinger of things to come in 2019? Michael Rothstein covers the Lions for ESPN, and he joined me this week on the Two-Man Advantage podcast to provide me with a status report and a to-do list as the Lions enter a critical offseason, looking to improve their odds and their favor heading into next year. So, Michael, first of all, we want to welcome you to the Two-Man Advantage podcast, and we're excited to talk some Lions football with you this morning, buddy.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So when we look at the Lions, what do you think is the biggest lesson they learned under first-year head coach Matt Patricia about themselves?
I don't know if there's necessarily a lesson they learned. I think there's more of a lot of lessons probably that Matt Patricia learned, because he's first-time head coach, and he'd never done this before, and he'd really only been in one place. Well, he's just been in one place in his NFL career before last year, and that was in New England. So a lot of what the Lions had done in 2018 was very New England-esque, from things they did on the field to things they did off of it, and how they handled certain things. And I think Matt Patricia probably learned a lot about himself and about what it takes to be a head coach. And that, to me, would be the biggest lesson that I think the Lions learned last year, is kind of from that. Because the players are going to be the players, and they're going to learn different things about themselves, but I don't think they're going to necessarily learn anything about the team. And so much of that has to be through Matt Patricia and what Matt Patricia does and how he handles the team. And that's, to me, the biggest thing going forward, because let's be honest, players a lot of times come and go, including this group of players, and there's a reasonable assumption that a lot of the players that were on the team this year might not be there next year in 2019, just because roster turnover, plus the Lions are really trying to shape the roster in Matt Patricia's vision and now in Darrell Bevel's vision, where before it was Jim Bob Cooter's offense, so they might need some different pieces. So I expect a decent amount of roster turnover. So to me, this is a long answer for just saying I think the biggest lessons that were learned were that Matt Patricia needs to kind of be more of himself and not maybe replicate as much of New England as he did. There are certainly some things to take from that and to take from the Patriots, but that to me would be the biggest thing that maybe the Lions learned, is that, and that Matt Patricia learned, is that they need to kind of not maybe do all of that.
Inquiring minds want to know, including yours truly, do you believe the turning point in their season came when they traded Golden Tate?
I don't know if that was necessarily the turning point in their season, although that was definitely the signal that the Lions maybe weren't expecting to be as competitive as they thought they might be, because why otherwise trade your best receiver? Now, sure, you got a 2019 third-round pick versus a potential 2020 third or fourth-round pick, depending on what the compensation would have been if you weren't going to re-sign Golden Tate. So I get that that gets you a draft pick sooner, and that's important. But at that point, when the Lions traded Golden Tate, they were very much in the division, and it was a division that looked like it was wide open, as good as the Bears may have looked at that point in time, as good as the Bears may have ended up being, especially defensively. So making that move, to me, definitely changed, I think, the outlook for the season. But at that point, even, you knew this team was a flawed team.
Mm-hmm.
You just saw it, and there were just too many holes there. And they remedied some of them because, obviously, they traded for Damon Harrison, and he was great for them over the last half of the year, and he's going to be a real building block for them over the next couple of years. He solidified their run defense. He solidified the interior of their defensive line. But so I don't know if it was necessarily like the turning point in the season for the Lions. I think it was the turning point in the offense, for sure, because the offense never really looked the same after they traded Golden Tate, because they lost their most productive receiver and arguably their best receiver and their best weapon. So you look at that and you say, okay, that was a big point. But I think that, to me, I don't know if there was ever a turning point, because they never won 2 games in a row all year, at least back-to-back. The only time they won 2 in a row was when they had the bye. And that, to me, signaled that, hey, you know what, like, maybe, just maybe, nothing really ever felt on solid footing all season long. So I don't think there was a turning point. I think it was just kind of the way the year went. It wasn't like they were doing really well and then they collapsed, like so many prior Lions seasons had happened. This one was just different in that I don't think they ever really got truly going to fall apart.
And with the combine coming up, what do you think they'll be focusing on as priorities this offseason and as they enter the talent evaluation process?
They're going to look at a little bit of everything, and they really kind of need to. Bob Quinn obviously said at the member summit they're kind of open to everything, including a quarterback at number 8. I wouldn't expect them to take a quarterback at number 8. I just can't really see it from a lot of perspectives, most notably that they, frankly, have a lot more needs than quarterback and a lot bigger needs than quarterback at this point in time. Plus, they're really tied into Matthew Stafford for at least another season, if not another 2 financially, before they can really consider moving on from him. So it doesn't make sense to take a quarterback unless you are absolutely in love with, say, a Kyler Murray or a Dwayne Haskins, and they're there at number 8, and you just think that that's the guy you want to build around, and then you take that person and you kind of really put Matthew Stafford in an Alex Smith situation in Kansas City, where once they took Patrick Mahomes, everyone kind of knew, hey, at some point they're going to go to Mahomes. When is that going to be? And that ended up being, obviously, after Mahomes' rookie year. So will they look at quarterbacks? Sure. I think they're going to look at everybody because they're sitting there at 8. But their real needs start on the defensive line, start with an edge rusher. They go to cornerback. They need another linebacker. They need a tight end. They need a wide receiver. They probably need a running back to replace LeGarrette Blount, but that could very well be a veteran. And maybe Zach Zenner. They might need to replace him, or they may bring him back. So they have a lot of needs, and they got to figure out the right guard situation, because even if TJ Lang comes back in 2019, which is no certainty because he's gotten over $11 million cap hit, you need to find a long-term replacement at right guard. And Bob Quinn has shown over the past 2 to 3 years that he is going to put a large priority on the offensive line and building that offensive line, and has mostly done that. So that's a long answer for saying, yeah, I think they're going to look at everything, but edge rusher is going to definitely be a place I think that they look at high in the draft. I don't think that they would take a tight end at number 8, especially because it is a pretty deep tight end class, so you can get away with probably taking a tight end in round 2 or maybe round 3 and have that person be a contributor in his rookie year. So maybe corner, maybe linebacker, maybe edge rusher, somewhere on the defensive line. That, to me, would be where I think that they're going to look at number 8 and also really focus a lot of their attention at the Combine. But that's one of the myths of the Combine. Most teams look at pretty much every player and have some contact with a lot of players because, let's just take the quarterback situation, for instance. Now, the Lions in the NFC North aren't really going to see any new quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is there, Kirk Cousins is there, Mitchell Trubisky is there. But there's a chance they could very well play the team that drafts Kyler Murray or Dwayne Haskins. So sometimes teams will meet with prospects because they know, hey, there's a chance my opponent could draft them, so let me start learning about them a little bit in the draft process, especially as a rookie, because, hey, the more you know is the more you know. So some of the evaluation process in the draft is not necessarily for a player they're definitely going to take or even consider, but someone they might see down the road and potentially see a decent amount.
Bob Quinn was hired to bring the Lions out of the pitfalls of mediocrity. However, he fired a coach who went 9-7 and made the playoffs 2 out of the 4 years he was roaming the sidelines after Quinn said 9-7 wasn't good enough. However, since then, it's been a topsy-turvy road for the Lions. With that in mind, if someone was to ask you to grade or gauge the current direction of the franchise under Quinn, how would you answer that question?
I mean, I don't really know if you totally know that yet. They definitely have an idea of where they want to go and what they want to do. It's moreover just, can they get there? Bob Quinn has been very adamant since he took the job. He has a vision for where they're taking it. And he's really tried to build it in that vision, and you've seen that with the offensive line, and you've seen that with the depth that they've added. And they have better depth now than I think that they had at any time really under Martin Mayhew, although to be fair to Martin Mayhew, he was really starting from almost scratch when they drafted Matthew Stafford in 2009 because of how bad that team was in 2008, obviously not winning a game. So you're seeing what Bob Quinn can do, and he's made some really shrewd moves with trades, Snacks Harrison being a really good one. Eli Harold was an underrated trade that I didn't necessarily think was a great one at the time, but it turned out to be a valuable depth piece for them. And, you know, he's made good moves there. The draft has been hit and miss. He's had some really good picks in the middle rounds. The third round has been really good for him. Kenny Galladay with the third-round pick, Grant Glasgow, third-round pick. Tracy Walker, still a lot to be determined there, but he looks like he could be a good player, and no one was really thinking that he was going to be a third-round pick, including Tracy Walker. And if he ends up being a contributor for them for 6-7 years, then that ends up being a really solid third-round pick. So he's had good success in the third round. Some of the other rounds have not been great. Obviously, the Cheese Tabor selection in the second round a couple years ago does not look like a good one right now. And his free agency moves have been mixed bags. I don't fault him for signing and for giving T.J. Lang the money that he did, or Rick Wagner the money that he did. But neither one of them, I think, has worked out to the cost that they paid them. But at the time, based off of how they played in free agency, they were really strong, smart moves, and you solidified your offensive line by doing that. And you couldn't really predict that T.J. Lang would be as injured as he has been the last 2 years. Marvin Jones is a guy that, you know, he established right away. That was his first big move as a general manager after he kept Jim Caldwell was Calvin Johnson retired. So they went out and signed the best receiver on the market, and that was Marvin Jones. And he was a 1,000-yard receiver in 2017. He was close to 1,000 yards in 2016, and obviously missed half the season really this year, but was on pace for another 700-800-yard season, and that's been a good signing. So he's had good high-end signings. He hasn't really whiffed on any of those. The mid-range guys have been hit and miss, but a lot of times you forget those mid-range guys that he signs, and then he gets rid of quickly. And that's something I think that Bob Quinn should get a lot of credit for, is that if he made a mistake or there's a guy that's just not working out, he doesn't on to him just because that's his guy and he signed him. He's willing to kind of move on from that and kind of admit the mistake pretty quickly, and that's good for the Lions, and that's good for kind of him as well. And you saw that really across the board as they've gone since he's been GM, even starting way back in his first year with Jeremy Curley, with Jeff Schwartz and with Stephen Ridley.
It's no secret that Matthew Stafford did not have a banner statistically year by his standards, and the team did not reach greater heights. With that as a backdrop, how critical is it for him to have a bounce-back year for his own personal standing and the overall team success?
No, listen, there's no question. It's massive for him that he has a good year this year. There's no doubt about that. He has to have a good year. If for nothing else than what we were talking about a little bit earlier, there is a chance after this season that if he doesn't play well, the Lions could move on, because they will be in a position then where financially at least it would be reasonable, maybe not palatable, but reasonable for them to basically say, we don't think that this is working out, and it's time to move on. He's played here for, at that point, 11 seasons, and let's see what happens. Because the cap hit on that and the salary owed him will not be nearly as high as it would this year. Plus, Matthew Stafford is a very high-level competitor. The dude wants to win. There's no question about that. And I don't think he was happy with the way he played last year. And he's never really said that per se, but he's a guy who takes it very seriously. And I think for his own personal sake, he needs to play better next year, and he knows he wants to play better next year. And for the Lions, they need him to play better in 2019, and they need him to show that 2019 could be more like 2016 and 2017, and even 2015, where he was never the problem. If anything, he was a large reason why they won games, versus this past season where he was part of the problem, and he was reverting back to fourth quarter mistakes that he hadn't made with any sort of consistency in years. And it wasn't entirely clear why that was happening. He was banged up, obviously, a decent portion of the year. He got hurt in week 1 and played through it, and then obviously was doing the back thing through a decent portion of November and December. So he needs to show that he's healthy, too, but that when he's healthy, he's more the quarterback that everybody kind of saw in 2016, 2017, the quarterback that earned that massive $135 million deal versus the quarterback that we saw last season that really struggled and really looked like he was regressing a bit.
And my final question for you is, if you had to complete the sentence, it would be a successful season for the Lions if, how would you complete that sentence, Michael?
I mean, I think that that's a multi-pronged answer, but I would say make the playoffs. You have to make the playoffs. If you're Bob Quinn, if you're Matt Patricia, now granted, if injuries happen, then that changes things, and that changes expectations. You know, if Matthew Stafford gets hurt in May and he's done for the year, as an example, like that changes what the expectations would be for this team. But if you were the Lions, you need to make the playoffs in 2019 because you fired a coach in 2017, Jim Caldwell, who made the playoffs in 2 of his 4 years as the team's coach. He went 9-7 his last 2 years. He went over 500 in 3 of his 4 years as a coach, and you got rid of that guy to basically say you need to take a step forward. They like you said, that wasn't good enough, and you hired Matt Patricia to win those big games, to win division titles, to get further than Jim Caldwell did, which was a couple playoff appearances, and then move on. And then they were out. So I think that the short answer is they need to make the playoffs. Do they maybe need to win a playoff game? Does that make it a successful season? Yeah, if they win a playoff game, I think most people would say, yes, that was a successful season. But if they miss the playoffs, and there's not, then I think there's a lot of questions there. And if there's not improvement, if they go 6-10 again or 7-9, then I think there are even larger questions about the long-term future of where things are going with Matt Patricia and with Bob Quinn. So they need to be, I would say, at least 500. But moreover, making the playoffs to me is the barometer of success for them in 2019, barring a cataclysmic injury.
Hey, Michael, we want to take some time to thank you for appearing on the Too Bad Advantage podcast to talk some Lions football. We really appreciate it. I want to wish you a good day, buddy.
Oh, hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.